During the Second World War, Fiat would be a major producer of fighter aircraft for the Royal Italian Air Force. At the start of the conflict, the most advanced fighter in production with the company was the Fiat G50. This was not a particularly good aircraft, being slower and more weakly armed than many of its contemporaries, though it did rather well in Finland against the Soviets. The G50's rather poor performance, which to be fair was in line with all Italian fighters in the early war period, meant that there was an urgent need to come up with something better. And Fiat ultimately delivered that handsomely. In 1942, they flew for the first time the G.55 Centauro. This was one of a triumvirate of new Italian fighters, the 5 series, that used an Italian-built version of the Daimler-Benz DB605 engine as powerplant. With this and improved firepower, the G55 was a truly excellent aircraft. In fact, it was rated as the best of all Axis fighters. And before people start screaming in the comments, that's not me saying that. It was the assessment of Luftwaffe test pilots when they flew G55s against their own Bf-109Gs and FW-190s. Certainly the excellence of the aircraft was enough for the Italians to commission it into production in huge quantities, with orders totaling 2,400 placed. However, that was never to be. The G55 got into service in 1943, and by the time of the Italian surrender in September of that year, only 35, including prototypes, had been delivered. Production did continue for the fascist Italian air forces and the Luftwaffe, but in total only 274 G55s would be built by the time the war ended. But that did not spell the end of the Centauro. Because of the large orders placed, when the war ended there were stockpiles of production parts that hadn't been used up. And the quality of the design meant that, even in a world awash with surplus fighters, there were still some countries out there looking to buy. So in 1946, Fiat decided to restart manufacture, principally to clear the partially completed airframes off their production lines and get back to normality now the war was over. These were built as the G55A, a single-seat fighter, and the G55B, which was a two-seat trainer. Both Italy and Argentina purchased these in small numbers, but this threw up a fresh problem. The stocks of the Italian-built DB605s were used up, and Fiat found themselves with customers that wanted to order the aircraft still. So Fiat looked around for a comparable engine that was available in numbers that they could use to finish up the production orders for the Centauro. And there was one that largely fit the bill, the Rolls Royce Merlin. Fiat fitted a Merlin T24-2 into one of the airframes in early 1948 and proved that the concept was viable. The Italian Air Force, impressed by the results and realising that they too would soon have issues maintaining the DB605s fitted to their G55s, decided that refitting with Merlins was a logical idea for their own needs. They proceeded to have 12 of their existing aircraft converted to the new standard, designated as G.59s, and ordered an additional 16, mixed between single-seat fighters, designated as G.59 1As, and two-seat trainers, the G.59 1B. These aircraft all entered service with the Italian Air Force in 1950 and served as advanced fighter trainers. This was followed by an order from the Syrian Air Force. The Syrians were users of the G55 and were impressed with it, and they now needed more fighters in the light of the ongoing low-grade warfare they were engaged in with the new state of Israel. As the leftover parts from the war production had now largely been used up, this effectively required the restart of production, quite a remarkable step in the rebuilding of Italian industry. Syria ultimately purchased 26 single-seat G59-2A fighters and two two-seat G59-2Bs. The single-seaters were armed with 4 wing-mounted 20mm cannon, while the trainers had a pair of 50 caliber machine guns. Argentina also flirted with the idea of adopting the G59, buying a single 2A for evaluation, but no further order was forthcoming. The continued interest in the aircraft encouraged Fiat to build the 3A, which was to be a navigation trainer, but that did not proceed further than the prototype before the definitive version, the 4, was constructed. This changed the engine to a lower-powered Merlin 500-20 that produced 1,440 horsepower, and, most distinctively, a bubble canopy and cut down rear fuselage to give better all-round visibility. These were purchased by the Italian Air Force in modest numbers, with them buying 20 4A single-seaters and 10 4B two-seaters. Once again, these served as advanced fighter trainers and, somewhat understandably, because of their appearance and engine, were nicknamed as Italian Mustangs. Because of the differing designs and engines between types, definite performance figures are difficult to nail down. But it seems the top speed was 378 miles per hour, 409 kilometers per hour. I suspect this was achieved by the more powerful G.59-2As. The aircraft remained in service with the Italians for only a brief time, being retired from the Air Force in 1957, and I will admit that information on their use by the Syrians is very limited. But as the Syrians swiftly moved into the Soviet camp, ordering advanced jet fighters like the MiG-15 in 1955 and MiG-17s in 1956, I suspect the G-59s did not remain in service for too long with them either. But the G-59s did keep flying for a few more years, being used by technical colleges and attached flying schools for teaching in Italy. And apparently 5 are still in existence, 4 on static display in various museums and 1 still in flying condition. It also appears that others may be in the process of restoration, so if anyone knows anything about this, feel free to say so in the comments.